She stood in the doorway of the grand living room, her fingers trembling around a single $50 bill, while laughter exploded behind her like fireworks she would never be invited to watch. The Christmas tree sparkled with gold ornaments and wrapped gifts piled high beneath it, but none of that light reached her. In that moment, surrounded by people who were supposed to feel like family, she had never felt more alone. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when we least expect them, take a moment right now to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that even in our darkest hours, something beautiful can still unfold. Her name was Amara, and she had grown up in an orphanage on the outskirts of the city, a grey building where love was rationed and dreams were fragile. Every Christmas, wealthy families visited to donate toys and pose for photos, their smiles bright but distant. Amara would stand at the back of the group, clutching her gift, wondering what it felt like to belong somewhere. When she aged out of the system at 18, she carried two things with her: a small suitcase of clothes and an ache for connection that refused to fade. Life had not been gentle. She worked double shifts at a diner, saved every dollar she could, and rented a tiny basement apartment that smelled faintly of damp concrete. The holidays were the hardest. Social media flooded her phone with images of couples in matching pajamas, families decorating trees, tables overflowing with food. For someone who had never known family warmth, Christmas felt less like celebration and more like exposure, a spotlight on everything she didn't have. That year, a co-worker had invited her to a Christmas party, insisting she shouldn't spend the night alone. It was hosted by people Amara had never met, successful, polished, confident. At first, she planned to decline. But loneliness can be louder than pride. She accepted. The problem was the questions. She had learned over the years that gatherings like these came with polite smiles and sharp curiosity. Are you seeing anyone? Why are you alone? Where's your family? The words were harmless on the surface, but each one felt like salt pressed into an old wound. So, in a moment of impulsive desperation, Amara searched online and found a listing for a companion-for-hire service, $50 for a few hours. Someone to stand beside her, to laugh at the right moments, to silence the questions. That was how she met him. He introduced himself as Daniel. He arrived wearing a worn jacket and simple jeans, his hair slightly unkempt, his expression calm but guarded. He didn't look like the polished escorts she had imagined. If anything, he looked like a man who had known hardship himself. There was something steady in his eyes, though, something that made her feel less foolish about the arrangement. She handed him the $50, her cheeks burning with embarrassment, and he accepted it without judgment. When they entered the house together, the room shifted. Conversations paused. Amara could feel the stares, the quick assessments. Her plain dress and modest shoes stood in stark contrast to the glittering gowns and tailored suits around her. Daniel stayed close, his presence solid and reassuring. When the inevitable questions came, he answered with quiet confidence. He spoke about working on projects and investing time wisely, phrases vague enough to avoid lies, yet strong enough to command respect. Still, the laughter began. A group in red sequined outfits whispered and pointed. Someone muttered that Amara must have found him off the street. The words hit harder than she expected. Years of suppressed insecurity rose to the surface. She excused herself, stepping toward the tree, her head lowered. In her hand, she still clutched a few crumpled bills, the rest of her weekly grocery money, as if holding onto them could anchor her dignity. Daniel followed her. He didn't ask for the money back. He didn't mock her vulnerability. Instead, he stood beside her in silence, while the chandelier light flickered overhead. For the first time that night, Amara felt seen not as a charity case, not as a poor orphan pretending to belong, but as a human being fighting to keep her heart intact. Then something unexpected happened. The host of the party, a sharply dressed man known for his ruthless business tactics, approached Daniel with sudden recognition. His laughter faded, his posture stiffened. The room's energy shifted again, but this time not with ridicule, with disbelief. Whispers spread like wildfire. Phones were discreetly pulled out. Names were exchanged in hushed tones. Amara watched confusion ripple across the crowd as she realized the truth she had never suspected. Daniel was not a struggling drifter. He was a reclusive billionaire investor who had stepped away from public life after a betrayal in his own family shattered his trust. Known for moving quietly through cities without security or spectacle, he had built and sold companies worth hundreds of millions. The worn jacket was a choice, not a necessity. The simplicity was intentional. The same people who had laughed minutes before now scrambled to shake his hand. Compliments replaced insults. Invitations to exclusive events were extended with forced enthusiasm. But Daniel's attention never wavered from Amara. He explained later, in the calm quiet outside the house, that he had responded to the listing out of curiosity. He was tired of being valued for his wealth. He wanted to experience an evening where no one knew his name, where he could observe people without their masks. What he hadn't expected was to meet someone whose loneliness mirrored his own. Amara felt a swirl of emotions: shock, embarrassment, anger at herself for judging him by his clothes, and a strange warmth at the thought that someone so powerful had chosen to stand beside her without revealing who he was. But what moved her most was not his fortune. It was the way he had defended her without spectacle, the way he had treated her with dignity before anyone else knew his status. In the weeks that followed, Daniel returned the $50 with interest, not as charity, but as partnership. He offered to fund her education when he learned she had once dreamed of studying social work. He listened to her stories of the orphanage, of Christmases spent watching other children leave with foster families. And slowly, trust grew between them. Amara enrolled in university the next semester. She worked hard, not because she wanted to be rescued, but because she finally believed her future could be different. Daniel invested in programs supporting aging-out foster youth, inspired by her resilience. Together, they turned pain into purpose. Before this story comes to a close, I want to ask you something from the heart. If Amara's journey has touched you in any way, comment the word hope below. Let us know that kindness still matters. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that their circumstances do not define their destiny. On the following Christmas, Amara didn't stand alone in a corner. She stood at the center of a community center filled with laughter, children from foster homes opening gifts funded by a foundation she helped build. Daniel stood quietly at the back, not as a billionaire, but as a man who had finally found something money could never buy. And as the lights of the tree reflected in her eyes, Amara realized that the greatest miracle of that Christmas was not the hidden fortune she had stumbled upon, but the simple truth that sometimes, when you risk your last $50 on a chance at belonging, you discover that you were worthy of love all along. If this story warmed your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive, and somewhere out there, someone who feels alone tonight might just find the courage to believe again.